Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode in Vedic Astrology. So, as promised, today I'm going to be talking about the various houses in astrology, in Vedic astrology. Of course, Western astrology also has a concept of houses, but basically, the we've got 12 houses, okay, in Vedic astrology, and each house concentrates on a particular aspect of the person's life. All right, so let's get started. The first house. The first house is all about yourself. It's about your physique, your body. Generally, your mind, your body. It's all about you. It's the most important house um, in the horoscope because it's the first house. All right. Um, Second house. Second house is what you are born with. Okay, what you it's your skills, your family, your it's got to do with your face and your speech, right? And it can also indicate the source of your earnings, how you get your income, your wealth. All right. It can also be the wealth that you got as part of your birth, like your family's wealth, right? Your inheritance and stuff. It's not. Let me take it back. It's not about inheritance. It's something that you are born with. I'll explain more in detail when we reach the eighth house. Now, the moving on. The third house. Third house deals with your communication ability, how you communicate, how you think, and it also deals with your courage and your risk taking ability, and it also deals with your siblings. All right. Now, fourth house is traditionally ruled by Cancer, the moon, right? So it's dealing with your mother, and Cancer also deals with the home. So it's fourth house all about your house, land, and also your mental happiness. Okay, because moon deals with your mental happiness. So that's the fourth house. Fifth house is about children your education, your primary education, that is not higher education, your primary education. Higher education is the ninth house, and it's about um, hobbies, like things that you do it in your leisure time, like sports and games. Speculation is also falling under the fifth house, and that's about it. It's also, as I said, it's also about your intelligence, the intelligence that you have. So that also comes under the fifth house. Sixth house is the house of your it's a house of your enemies, your debts. It's also a house of your diseases, health issues that you may have. It's also a house of that deals with the servants that you have. Okay. Now, seventh house is directly opposite the first, right? The seventh house is the house of your spouse, your relations with the opposite sex, right? And the eighth house is it's again directly opposite to the second. So second is your wealth. So the eighth is actually the wealth of others, specifically your spouse's wealth. It also deals with other people's wealth also, like how if your eighth house is good, you can actually get wealth from other people. Things like inheritance, lotteries. If you win, if your eighth house is strong, you might win, the lottery one day. All right. It's also it's a bad house in the sense the house of death, and it's the house of it's also the house of taxes and research. Research is a good. It's also a house of, like things like magic. The astrology comes under the eighth house. And then also, black arts like black magic and all that. It's an eighth house concept. Okay, ninth house is a house of virtue. Okay, it's the house of teaching. It's the house of your teachers. It's a house of travel. Okay, travel to foreign countries and so on. um, Good luck, good virtue. Fifth, by the way, fifth house also the house of good luck, but ninth house is more of luck through good, virtue. So ninth house is strong means this person will be very, very virtuous and a person of dharma. Okay, tenth house is the house of career. It's a house of fame. It's a house of it's it's how people perceive you out there in the world. Okay, and out there in the world is what is your career, right? It's what you do for work. It's you go out there to prove yourself. So that's the tenth house. It's house of fame, the recognition that you get, and so on. Okay, and the 11th house is a house of networks, house of your friends, your professional networks. You know, it's also the house of gains that you get from your 10th house. Okay, 11th is what? Second from the 10th, right? It's the second house from the 10th. So if 10th is your career, then 11th is the gains that you make from your career. So income, the income that you get is the 11th house. And see, finally, 12th house. 12th house is traditionally the house of loss. So it's loss in the sense it's what you do for other people. Like you could be like fighting for other people, like a soldier, you know. So that's actually believe it or not, it can be considered a loss, right? Because you are losing yourself in the process. So it's what you give out to the world is what the 12th house is. So it's not necessarily a bad house, but it's also the house of dissolution. It's a house of um, where you lose yourself, where you wander around. So it's also the house of isolation, where you, like, for example, if the 12th house is very strong, you could be someone who is lost in a prison, or it is basically to do with isolated places like ashrams, prisons, and far off places that nobody goes to. Okay, total isolation, like sannyasis, right? So hence is a house of also um, renunciation, where you give up everything, all the worldly pleasures, and go there and meditate and whatnot. All right, and it's also the house of bed pleasures like sexual relations and so on. And let's see, covered a lot here of the 12th house. I think, yeah, I think that is it. All right, and by the way, talking about sexual pleasures, the seventh house is also an indicator of that because it's to do with your spouse and relations with the opposite sex. So, seventh house is also a house of pleasures. All right, and that's it. So I hope it was helpful to you, all this house description. And what we'll do in the next few episodes is we will analyze some horoscopes, and we'll get to know this much better, much deeper. All right, take it easy.